News spreads about two major recalls for certain Jeep hybrid vehicles and the risk of fire. Anxious owners are not sure how to proceed.
Let me ask you something before we get into this. When was the last time you actually checked whether your car had an open recall? Not when you bought it. Not when the dealer sent you something 2 years ago. Right now, today, do you know for certain that your vehicle is safe to park in your garage tonight? If you're not sure, you are not alone. Millions of drivers across the United States have no idea their vehicle is currently under a federal fire recall. And I don't mean a minor electrical glitch or a faulty sensor. I mean documented cases where vehicles have caught fire while parked, while turned off, while charging, and in some cases, while being driven at highway speed with zero warning to the person behind the wheel. Today we are going through 7 vehicles that currently carry active federal fire recalls. We'll break down what the defect actually is, what's happened in the real world, and exactly what you should do if you own one of these. Stay with me through all 7, because a few of these will surprise you, and one of them might be sitting in your driveway right now. Before we go further, drop a comment below. Tell me what you drive. I genuinely want to know who's in the audience today and whether anyone here is affected by what we're about to discuss. Number 7. Ford and Lincoln, engine block heater fire risk. We're opening with a recall that targets something most people never give a second thought to, the engine block heater. If you live in a cold weather state, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Montana, Michigan, you probably plug your truck or SUV in overnight. It's routine. It keeps the engine warm so it starts cleanly in the morning. You plug it in, go to bed, and wake up ready to go. Except for tens of thousands of Ford and Lincoln owners, that overnight routine now carries a documented fire risk. The issue is with the block heater cord itself. The heater element retains heat at levels it was never designed to sustain, and that excess heat transfers directly into the cord's insulation. Over time, the insulation breaks down, melts, and the surrounding materials become a potential ignition source, all while you're asleep and the vehicle is sitting completely still in your garage. Ford confirmed actual property damage and fire incidents tied to this defect before issuing the recall. The remedy is a redesigned replacement cord, but until that replacement is physically installed, Ford's official guidance is straightforward: do not use the block heater at all. Do not plug it in under any circumstances. Now think about what that means for someone in Fargo or Green Bay. Your vehicle was designed and marketed with this feature as a cold climate solution. You've depended on it for years. And now you're being told to stop using it entirely, with no firm timeline on when replacement parts will be available everywhere. If you own a Ford or Lincoln and you've been plugging in overnight without checking your recall status, pause everything and go to nhtsa.gov/recalls. Enter your VIN. It takes under a minute. Do it today. Have you ever plugged in a block heater overnight? Tell me in the comments. I want to get a sense of how many people this situation actually affects. Number 6. Subaru Forester Hybrid and Crosstrek Hybrid, battery short circuit risk. Subaru has built one of the most loyal customer bases in the automotive industry. AWD, eyesight safety systems, strong crash ratings. The brand has staked its reputation almost entirely on the idea that a Subaru protects you. That makes this recall particularly difficult to sit with. The Forester Hybrid and Crosstrek Hybrid are under federal recall for a battery system defect rooted in a manufacturing flaw that allows internal components inside the hybrid pack to short circuit. The result is a fire risk that can occur while the vehicle is parked and completely switched off. This is not a driving scenario. This is not a crash scenario. This is your car sitting in your garage, doing nothing, and becoming a fire hazard anyway. The Subaru buyer profile makes this especially concerning. These aren't fleet vehicles. These are family SUVs. They're driven by outdoor enthusiasts, parents, people who park in attached garages right next to their living spaces. The very trust that makes someone buy a Subaru is what makes this recall hit differently. Subaru has directed affected owners to contact their dealers immediately and, in the interim, to follow safe parking guidance, meaning, do not park in enclosed structures. But parts availability for the actual fix has created real waiting periods. Owners are making monthly payments on a vehicle they cannot park in their own home. That's a situation no one budgeted for when they signed the lease papers. If you drive a Forester hybrid or Crosstrek hybrid, check your recall status today. Don't assume you're not affected. Verify it. Number 5, Volvo EX30, 2025 and 2026 models, new vehicle, immediate recall. I want you to picture this for a moment. You've waited months for your new EV. You've done the research, you've placed the order, you've made the financial commitment. You drive it home. That new car feeling is real. And then, weeks later, a letter arrives telling you to limit your charging to 70% of capacity and to park the vehicle outside, because the battery may be a fire hazard. That is exactly what happened to owners of the 2025 Volvo EX30 shortly after deliveries began. The recall, issued in January 2026, covers a battery defect involving microscopic lithium plating growth inside specific battery cells manufactured by Sunhua Power Battery Company in China. This plating causes internal short circuits within the cells, and internal short circuits in a lithium-ion battery create the conditions for thermal runaway, which is a technical way of describing a self-sustaining, intensely dangerous fire that standard extinguishers cannot stop. The scale of the recall differs by market. Australia saw over 2,800 units recalled. The United States recall covered a smaller number of vehicles, but the manufacturing defect itself is a global issue tied to a specific production batch, which means the conversation is larger than any single country's numbers suggest. For everyday owners, the practical impact is significant. A 70% charge cap on a vehicle rated for around 275 miles of full-range driving drops your usable range to roughly 190 to 195 miles. That changes your daily planning. It changes road trip logistics. It fundamentally alters what you purchased. And here's the layer that stings most. Volvo is the company that invented the three-point seatbelt and then gave the patent away to the rest of the automotive world because they believed safety was more important than profit. That decision saved hundreds of thousands of lives. That legacy is foundational to the brand's identity. And now Volvo is telling new EX30 owners to treat their vehicle as a potential fire risk while engineers work on a permanent solution that, at the time of the recall, had not yet been finalized. Are any of you in the market for an EV right now or recently took delivery of one? I'd love to hear your experience in the comments, especially if this kind of news changes how you're thinking about your purchase. Number 4, Mercedes-Benz EQB, a fire at a public charging station. On March 31, 2026, in Mechanicsville, Pennsylvania, a woman was sitting inside her Mercedes-Benz EQB at a public charging station when she heard a loud pop. Within moments, dense gray-white smoke began pouring through the vehicle. She got out immediately and ran. She made it out safely. Not every scenario will end that way. The color of that smoke matters and it's worth explaining. Gray-white smoke from a lithium-ion battery is a sign of thermal runaway in progress. The Fire Safety Research Institute has published findings on what that vapor actually contains, a toxic, flammable mixture of gases that poses serious long-term health risks. You do not want to breathe it. You absolutely do not want to be trapped inside a vehicle producing it. The EQB has been under recall for battery-related issues involving internal faults that can lead to shorts within the battery pack. Owners have been advised not to charge above 80%. But the fundamental problem with an internal cell-level fault is this: if the defect exists inside the cell itself, even controlled charging levels may not eliminate the risk entirely. That Pennsylvania incident also exposed a critical infrastructure problem that goes well beyond the EQB specifically. At most public charging stations today, there is no visible emergency stop mechanism, no clearly marked cutoff, no safety signage, no button that a first responder can reach quickly. Power continued flowing to that charging pedestal while the vehicle was actively on fire. At gas stations, emergency shutoffs are a mandatory safety standard. They are positioned at specific distances, clearly marked, and first responders know exactly where they are. That infrastructure does not exist at the majority of public EV charging locations right now. The woman in Pennsylvania survived because she was alert, physically able to exit, and fortunate in her timing. But think about what happens to someone who isn't mobile, or who doesn't notice the warning signs in time. A vehicle plugged into a charging station cannot be driven away while connected. Your only option is to exit and move away from the vehicle on foot. This is a conversation the EV industry needs to have urgently, and it's separate from any single recall. Number 3, Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe, 2022 to 2026, a flagship SUV under fire. The Grand Cherokee 4xe sits at the top of Jeep's lineup. Prices run from $65,000 to $75,000 or higher depending on trim. When someone chooses that vehicle, they're choosing what the brand considers its best work. Stellantis confirmed a recall affecting 91,844 Grand Cherokee 4xe models for a high-voltage battery defect. 19 fires have been reported across affected vehicles. The root cause traces back to Samsung SDI battery cells with damaged internal separators, the thin component inside each cell that prevents the positive and negative sides from making contact. When a separator fails, an internal short circuit becomes nearly inevitable. When that happens inside a battery pack positioned within the passenger compartment, thermal runaway follows. And thermal runaway is not something you can manage with a standard fire extinguisher. Once it begins, it progresses cell to cell through the entire pack. What makes this recall particularly frustrating from an ownership standpoint is the timeline of failed fixes. Stellantis issued a software-based remedy in 2023. Then again in 2024. 9 fires occurred in vehicles that had already received those software updates. The fixes did not solve the underlying problem. At least one injury has been reported. As of now, a permanent hardware-based remedy is still under development with no public timeline. Owners have been instructed not to charge the vehicle and to park outside away from structures. For a plug-in hybrid purchased specifically for its electric efficiency, that instruction means the vehicle is now operating as a heavier, less efficient gasoline vehicle, and owners are paying for technology they literally cannot use. Class action lawsuits have already been filed. The trust relationship between Jeep and its Grand Cherokee customer base is under considerable strain. Is anyone here a current Grand Cherokee 4xe owner? Seriously, if you are, please leave a comment. I want to hear what your experience has been with the dealer communication and the recall process. Number 2, Jeep Wrangler 4xe battery fires, 2020 to 2025, the largest Jeep recall in history. The Wrangler isn't just a vehicle. For a large segment of its ownership base, it represents something beyond transportation, a lifestyle, an identity, a machine built for places where roads stop existing. That's what makes this recall scale so staggering. 375,000 Jeep Wrangler 4xe models are currently under federal recall for battery fires. That is the largest recall in Jeep's history. But the number itself isn't the most alarming part. The history of this recall is. The first version of this recall came in late 2023, covering approximately 32,000 vehicles. Software updates were issued. Stellantis indicated the problem was addressed. It was not. The recall expanded in 2024 to 154,000 vehicles. More software updates followed. More assurances were given. Multiple fires continued to be reported in vehicles that had already received the 2024 software remedy. In November 2025, the recall expanded again to its current size, 375,000 vehicles. This is the third recall for the same underlying defect, Samsung SDI battery cells with damaged separators. One compromised cell in a pack of roughly 100 is enough. A single failed separator triggers a short, the short starts thermal runaway, and thermal runaway cascades through the entire pack with nothing able to stop it from the outside. Wrangler owners have been told to keep the battery depleted, stop charging, and park away from structures. But keeping a plug-in hybrid battery deliberately empty means hauling that entire battery's dead weight in every trip, with reduced performance and worse fuel economy. You're paying for a system you've been told to abandon. A permanent hardware solution is still in development. No public timeline has been confirmed. 3 recalls. 9 fires in already repaired vehicles. 1 injury reported. Hundreds of thousands of owners waiting. Number 1, Jeep Wrangler 4xe engine fires, 2024 to 2025, 2 separate fire risks, 1 vehicle. The Wrangler appears on this list twice. And the reason it holds the top position is not just the severity of the second defect, it's what it means to be a Wrangler 4xe owner right now. Consumer Reports documented 36 fires and 3 injuries connected to engine failures in 2024 and 2025 Wrangler 4xe models, as well as 2023 to 2025 Grand Cherokee 4xe vehicles. This is covered under Recall 25V766. The cause is a basic manufacturing failure that is difficult to understand made it through a production quality process. After engine blocks were cast, they were not properly cleaned. Sand and debris from the casting process were left inside the engine. That contamination restricts oil flow. Restricted oil flow accelerates internal wear and damage. Internal damage causes catastrophic engine failure. And in some of these cases, that failure produces a fire, not while parked, not while charging, but while driving on the highway at speed. Some owners received warning signs beforehand, knocking sounds, check engine lights. Others received no indication at all before the failure occurred. Now here is the detail that defines why this is number 1 on this list. For certain 2024 and 2025 Wrangler 4xe owners, this engine recall is their 4th active recall. They are simultaneously under separate park-outside orders for the battery fire defect and the engine fire defect. 2 completely independent fire risks. 1 vehicle. A price tag that frequently exceeds $60,000. And Stellantis is still developing permanent remedies for both. When a vehicle fails at highway speed with no warning, you don't have a frustrating customer service experience. You have a life-threatening emergency. 3 reported injuries across these engine incidents confirm that this is not a theoretical risk. I want to ask you directly, if you discovered your vehicle had 4 active recalls at the same time, what would you do? Would you stop driving it entirely? Would you pursue legal options? Tell me in the comments. There's no wrong answer here, and your response might help someone else in the same position figure out their next step. What you need to do right now, for any vehicle on this list. I'm not going to leave you with a problem and no direction. Here is exactly what to do, in order, today. First, go to nhtsad.gov/recalls. Type in your VIN. This takes under a minute and it tells you immediately whether your vehicle has any open recall, not just the ones on this list, but any federal safety recall currently active on your specific vehicle. Second, follow every parking instruction associated with your recall. I know parking outside in January is not what anyone wants to hear. But enclosed structures amplify risk dramatically. Park in the open, away from other vehicles and structures, until your recall repair is completed. Third, call your dealer and get on the repair list now. Parts availability varies significantly across markets. The earlier your name is in the system, the sooner you move through the queue when components become available. Fourth, document everything. Save every recall notice, every repair order, every piece of written communication you receive from the manufacturer or dealer. If this situation develops into legal action, and for many of these vehicles, it already has, you will need a paper trail. Fifth, if you are offered a software update as a fix for any of the Jeep 4xe battery issues specifically, ask hard questions before accepting it as the final solution. Multiple rounds of software updates have already failed to prevent fires in vehicles that received them. A hardware-level problem requires a hardware-level remedy. And one final note for anyone shopping used vehicles right now, always run the VIN before purchasing. Confirm that any open recalls have been properly completed and that documentation proving the repair exists. Ask for it in writing. 7 vehicles. Active federal recalls. Real fires. Real injuries. Real people waiting on fixes that haven't arrived yet. If you made it through this entire breakdown, I want to say something directly to you. You are exactly the kind of informed driver who can protect yourself and the people around you. Share this with anyone you know who drives one of these vehicles. They might not know. Most people don't. And one more question before you go: what do you think manufacturers owe customers when a recall remedy fails and the problem continues? Does a failed fix change your trust in a brand permanently, or do you give them the benefit of the doubt? Leave your answer below. This is the kind of conversation worth having, and I read every single comment. Stay safe out there.